what's good, y'all? It's Stinger, and today I'm going to be showing each and every one of you how you can make snares, claps, and rims using Serum. I made a tutorial not too long ago about how to make 808s, and I figured I'd continue this sound design tutorial so that you guys can make your own fully custom drum kits. So after these tutorials, I better not see any like $40 drum kits with the Luger slap clap, alright? But yeah, ranting aside, let's just go straight into the tutorial. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to go over how to make is a snare. And the first step is going to be changing this default wavetable to a sine wave. And you can do that by clicking on it, going to analog, and then analog BD sine. The next step is going to be creating an LFO to link to the level of that sine wave. So we're going to take this middle point, push it all the way to the left. We're going to create another point, drag it somewhere to the middle, and then give it a bit of a curve. After that, we're going to set it to envelope mode, and then we're going to turn off BPM. Now we're going to route that LFO to the level, go to the matrix, set the type to go back and forth, and turn the amount all the way up. Now we're going to take this level and put it somewhere near the center, and now let's give it a listen. As you can tell, it's barely audible, so to combat that, we're going to adjust the rate of the LFO. Alright, so I'm liking how it sounds at around 2.1 hertz. So once that's done, the next step is going to be throwing in some noise. And we're going to do that by enabling it up here and selecting a noise to use. Now, personally, I like to use the Alpha NZ, but there are tons of different noises that you can use in Serum, as well as noises that you could just pull from other packs. So once we have our noise selected, we're going to route LFO1 to the level of the noise. Then we're going to turn the level all the way down and turn the LFO all the way up. So this is what our snare is sounding like so far. Super basic sound, but we're going to do some things to change that. Firstly is going to be adding a filter within Serum. So we're going to click on the filter, go to normal, and then go to high 6. Then we're going to give this a bit of drive and adjust the cutoff a little bit. And we're going to want to make sure that this filter is applied to the noise. So we're going to hit the N right here. So this is what our snare is sounding like now. Now we're getting somewhere. The final step within Serum is going to be adding effects. And there are only a couple of effects that I like to add within Serum. The rest is just done through FL Studio. The first is going to be distortion on the xfer preset. This kind of dampens the sound a little bit, but makes it sound a little bit more full. Really, you can use any preset for the distortion. That's what's great about sound design. It's all just up to what you think sounds good. But I personally like to use the xfer preset. Next, I throw down a compressor and I adjust the threshold and the gain a little bit. And if I want my snare to be super gritty, I'll turn on multiband mode. And the final thing that I like to add within Serum is going to be a reverb. And I'm going to take it off Hall mode and turn it into a plate reverb. And then I'm also going to drag this LFO onto the mix. This makes it so that it doesn't have a super long tail end. The reverb only lasts as long as the snare does. So we're just going to turn the mix all the way down and adjust the LFO. So here is the sound that we have so far. Now, it's sounding pretty good, but there are some other things that we could throw down in FL Studio to make it sound better. The first of which is going to be some kind of saturation plugin, and I decided to use FabFilter Saturn. This just makes the snare a whole lot more warm and full. And some free alternatives to this would be Saturator Knob and Fruity Blood Overdrive. The next thing I threw down is a Fruity Wave Shaper, and I do this because I thought the snare was a little bit too harsh, so this is being used to kind of dampen that sound a little bit. The next thing I'll throw down is an EQ taking out the low ends, as well as boosting and cutting some frequencies to my liking. And finally, a plugin that I throw on every single drum sound that I make is Soothe 2. Soothe 2 is a dynamic resonance suppressor, so it basically just tames harsh frequencies. And I do this so that people aren't listening to the drum kit and are like, oh man, that clap is freaking killer, but there's just a super tingy high-end frequency that I just don't like. So yeah, this basically just eliminates that complaint. So without any effects, this is what our snare sounded like. And this is what it sounds like with the effects. Kind of a little bit more of a tame sound, but it's really all just up to preference of what you want it to sound like. So now that we've covered how to make snares, let's go over claps. The first thing that we're going to do with this clap is we're going to disable the main oscillator and enable the noise. After that, we're going to choose which noise we want to use, and I'm just going to go yet again with the Alpha NZ. And now the next step is going to be forming our LFO. And the best way to remember the LFO formation for claps is to remember it having like a teeth-like pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this middle point and drag it all the way to the left, and we're going to form our first tooth by creating another point and dragging it all the way down. Next, we're going to create another tooth by doing the same thing. And then we're going to do it again and then maybe another time. For my claps, I like to have either 3 or 4 teeth. It's really just up to preference though. So for this one, I'm going to have 3 teeth. And for your final tooth, instead of dragging it all the way down, you're actually going to drag it somewhere towards the center. This allows the noise to ring out a little bit longer and gives the clap a bit of a tail end. So now yet again, we're going to route this LFO to the level. And then for this LFO, yet again, we're going to turn on envelope mode and turn off the BPM. Now we're going to route it to the level of the noise, turn the level all the way down and turn the LFO all the way up. And now we're going to listen to our sound and adjust the rate to where it sounds like how we want it to sound. So I'm liking how it sounds at around 6.2 hertz. The final step in Serum for creating this clap is going to be effects. And I only throw down two things. The first is distortion with tube saturation. And yet again, not only with this sound design tutorial, but for all sound design tutorials, most of what's said is just a preference in terms of what should be thrown down and what noise you should use. So don't be afraid to experiment with different distortion presets, different noises, different reverbs, all this kind of stuff. Because once you start breaking those barriers, you'll be able to make some really cool and unique sounds. And the final effect I'm gonna throw down within Serum is going to be a compressor. Yet again, I'm just gonna adjust the threshold and the gain. So this is what our clap is sounding like thus far. Now we're just going to take it into FL Studio and make some minor adjustments. The first thing that we're going to throw down yet again is going to be some kind of saturator. Yet again, I'm using FabFilter Saturn, and I just have it on the Mythical 3D preset. The second thing you're going to throw down yet again is going to be an EQ cutting out those low ends. And finally, yet again, I'm throwing down Soothe 2 as I do for all of my drum sounds. So without the effects, this is what the clap sounds like. And with the effects, this is what the clap sounds like. It really isn't a huge difference, but you can add a ton of other creative effects to make it stand out a little bit more. So now that we've gone over how to make the claps as well, let's go over the final part of this tutorial, being making rim shots. And rims are really one of the easiest drum sounds that you can make. The first thing we're going to do is yet again disable oscillator A and turn on the noise. Then you can choose whichever noise sound you want to use. And then after that, the most important part of making a rim is going to be adjusting the envelope. So we're just going to take it down so that it looks real skinny. And then I like to have my decay anywhere from 40 to 60 milliseconds. So I'm going to put it right at 50. So this is what our rim is sounding like so far. As you can tell, we already have an almost perfect basis. The final thing to do within Serum is going to be to add effects, and I'm just going to throw down a little bit of tube saturation. Next, yet again, we're going to take it into FL Studio and add some various effects. The first is going to be an EQ taking out the lows, and this is up to personal preference, but I like to boost the low mids. Along with that, as always, I threw down Soothe 2, and that's really all you need in terms of basic effects to clean up the sound. But what's cool about rims is that you can throw down a bunch of creative effects to make them sound unique. So for this tutorial, I didn't want to go too crazy, so I just threw down a huge reverb from Valhalla Supermassive. But really try to experiment with almost every single effect plugin that you have. That not only applies for rims, but for every single drum sound. Some of my favorites to use are Effect Racks, both Shaper Box 2 and 3, any kind of phasers. Filter Freak is also an amazing plugin. Like literally just use every single effect plugin that you have and just browse the presets. And by doing that, you'll get a bunch of unique sounds. But yeah, that is going to pretty much cover how to make snares, claps, and rims using Serum. I thoroughly hoped you enjoyed this tutorial. I know this may have moved a little bit fast, so if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments down below. Also, consider joining my Patreon where I post the FLPs to all of my beats in all of my videos. And for this sound design series, I'm also going to be posting the Serum presets for every single sound that I go over. So if you're lazy like me and you just want to drag and drop presets to make your sounds, you'll have the ability to do so. And finally, consider subscribing as I post 1 tutorial a week and 2 sound kits a month. Other than that, that's going to be it. Peace.